He's Bruce the Blog.
And he's Bazzo, and you're watching Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo. This week, we want to start off, as we always do, with mentioning a couple of events that are coming up actually this coming weekend and a little beyond that as well. This weekend is the Supporter Walk by Support Connection for Breast and Ovarian Cancer. This is one of the largest, most significant charity fundraisers in this region. Thousands of people converge on FDR Park. It's a very poignant as well as a very uplifting event. And so check out Support Connection. You know, I don't have to really give websites for any of these because today, with search being, you know, what everybody does to find things online, it's Support Connection that you want to look for if you need more information on the Supporter Walk this weekend at FDR Park. Also, the Mahopac Chamber of Commerce has their street fair this weekend, which is another very big event in Putnam.
Mahopac.
No, it's Mahopac, actually. That's what I was told, and I like to pronounce things.
I've been here longer than you. You're a newbie. You've only been here since 96.
Okay. Well, in any case, and there's only one way to pronounce Yorktown. So
yes, that doesn't matter.
And then also October 9 is the Yorktown Chamber of Commerce Street Festival, right in the middle of Yorktown Heights, and that's a huge event. And again, kudos to the Chamber of Commerce, the Yorktown Chamber, for starting that only a couple of years ago, and it's immediately become the big marquee event of the year in Yorktown. And that kudos also to my good friend Joe Visconti, president of the Chamber, and the whole board of directors and all the volunteers.
And you're going to let the politicians have tables?
I'm sure they will. If the politicians pay for the tables,
No,
their money's as good as anybody's. Yeah, right, yeah, a few years ago, yes. Right. And then in our self-serving segment of the events calendar is the foundation that our family and our friends run, and that's called the Harrison A. Parr Field of Dreams Foundation. We have every year on Columbus Day, which is Monday, October 10. It's always Monday, Columbus Day, and it's October 10 this year, and that's the Harrison A. Parr YAC Yorktown Athletic Club Golf Classic at Mohansick Park. You can go to yacsports.com to check that out. And unless anything changes, we have it on good authority that Rusty Staub, Le Grand Orange of the Mets, as well as Bud Harrelson of the '69 Mets champion.
He made great ribs in his restaurant.
I used to go to Rusty's. Yes. Rusty's, as Bazzo was saying, Rusty's Ribs Restaurant in Manhattan. I used to walk in. I remember very well walking in one time, and Rusty's there. You know, and he was a very nice guy, Rusty.
Yes,
everybody says he is the nicest.
He was what you saw. He was
right. And he waved to Rusty and say hello, and he'd say hello right back. And so Bud Harrelson of the '69 Mets champion, and of the Yankees, Rick Cerrone, the catcher Rick Cerrone, and there could be two Rick Cerrones there because the other Rick Cerrone, who spells his name with two R's, was for many years the PR executive for the Yankees, and he's a local, and he does a lot of charity work here too. As far as ongoing events, I want to mention, again, my own company, Chase Media Group, and of course we're the Penny Saver and a lot of other things, and we sponsor the show, in fact. We've started to do a farmer's market at 1520 Front Street, at the end of Front Street, right in the parking lot. Every Saturday, starting at 10 a.m., there's a farmer's market there, so please come on down and check it out.
Is the town letting you put the signs out now?
Yeah, we're working with the town on the signage part of it. And then one last thing, and again, you know, since as you'll find out who the special guest is this week, it's you, the audience, as Bazzo likes to say. I thought it made sense for me to be extremely self-serving this week. And so the last thing I want to mention is the YCP Theater Works group. Again, you can look it up online, YCP Theater Works, is putting on Neil Simon's very funny play, The Prisoner of 2nd Avenue. It's the last 2 weekends in October and the first weekend in November. And somebody, who's in that cast, Bazzo? Somebody we know, isn't it?
Yes, you.
Right. Oh, that's right. That's right, me. I hope I can remember my lines better than I can remember who's in the cast. So, so the Prisoner of Second Avenue, here's the really cool thing. It's certainly not that I'm in the cast, but I do play Harry, the brother of the lead character, Mel. And I did live on Second Avenue, but I don't think that's why I got the part. But it's at Ciola Manor. It's dinner theater in Yorktown. So dinner theater is back in Yorktown. It's very affordable, $35 for the show, for a really nice dinner, dessert, all that stuff. And as Bazzo can tell you, his grandfather, Nino, is the original person who ran what is now Ciola Manor, and he used to have dinner theater there.
In fact, long before the Terrytown Dinner Theater, we had dinner theater before these people.
That Westchester Broadway Theater.
Right,
Westchester Broadway, in Elmsford.
It was another one of my grandfather's innovations.
Right.
We had the local theater groups
needing
a venue, and we had a 500-seat room, banquet room.
Right.
And so my grandfather had the wonderful idea, we'll give them the venue if we could sell dinners. We didn't charge them for the room.
Right.
So they can make all their money on their tickets.
Right. But you know, the interesting thing, if you think about it, Bazzo, the interesting thing is dinner theater used to be very popular, right? And and obviously in recent years it has not been, you know, exactly the flavor of the day, let's say. But I think some of it may have to do with the state of the economy. I have to tell you folks, forgetting about the fact that I'm in this show has nothing to do with it. I like dinner theater, and I love going to Westchester Broadway Theater in Elmsford. They do a tremendous job there, by the way, and My Fair Lady is coming up if you want to catch that, because it's a great value. I mean, in our case with the Prisoner of Second Avenue, it's on a smaller scale much smaller scale than Westchester Broadway Theater. It's $35 for dinner and a show.
Well, you know what the outrageous prices now of Broadway tickets. Dinner theater is coming back because you can get dinner and a show, even at Terrytown, and still spend less.
At Elmsford, well, Terrytown.
Right, whatever, but still spend less.
Right.
Than if you went to see a Broadway show.
Oh,
and
absolutely. And
you don't have to, we're including the parking.
Right.
And all that. But here you're getting, because a lot of shows stand on their own. Right. It's the material. My Fair Lady is one.
But no, and it's a good point you're making, by the way, Bazzo. You know, we suburbanites, I mean, for years and years, up until the last 5 years, I worked in Manhattan. And I lived in Manhattan. I wasn't a prisoner of Second Avenue, but I was on Second Avenue. And we take it for granted when you're in the suburbs, if you don't commute to the city for work, that parking here is free. You go to Westchester Broadway Theater, there's no parking fee. You go into the city for an evening, you're paying $40, $50 for parking.
Just for a couple hours.
Easy, right, easy.
And hopefully they don't damage your car.
Yeah, right, if you're lucky, right. And so let's also do quickly, folks, the salute and salvo of the week, which is also part of our regular regimen here on Bruce the Blog Goes Bazzo. Again, the salute, I'm going to go back to my own company, and I want to salute the owners of the company, the upper management, and that's Carla Chase Media Group, and Frank Rich, because the Yorktown seniors, and they wrote a letter about this that was published in a local paper, and we're going to put it on our website, but the Yorktown seniors do bingo every morning from Monday through Thursday from about 9 to noon, and they've been using the senior facilities at the Yorktown Community and Cultural Center, which is now under renovation. The town, unfortunately, could not accommodate them during the renovation, not to mention whenever you have that kind of renovation, there's all kinds of asbestos, you know, in the air, and it's not safe, it's dangerous to your health. So
it's getting old.
Huh?
So it's getting old.
I don't know anything about getting old. So, so the Yorktown seniors went to Michael Grace, who was running for Yorktown supervisor on the Republican line, and to Tom DiChiaro of the winery, who also, you know, was involved in politics. And they said maybe they could use the winery. That didn't work out because the town would not provide transportation to the winery, which we could talk about separately. And so Tom and Michael came to our company, and again, I spoke with Carla and Frank, and they were, as always, generous enough, extremely civic-minded and community-minded, to donate space. It's our very spacious lunchroom, actually, that is being used now Monday through Thursday morning for the Yorktown seniors. So my salute goes to Chase Media Group, to Carla Chase, Frank Rich, for continuing the tradition that Carla's father started of being very community-minded. And believe me, they may get upset with me that I'm even saying this, but they don't do it for the, for the publicity or the glory. They do it because it's the right thing to do. What a concept, right?
Yeah, there's an old story how you make 4 old people cuss. Yell bingo.
And then very quickly, our salvo of the week, I'm going to follow the lead of my partner and friend and role model, Bazzo, who did this to himself a couple of shows ago. I think it was last show. I'm going to salvo myself, and here's why. I recently posted a blog about some changes that I was told were impending at the Yorktown Republican Town Committee, which recently had a meeting reorganizational meeting, I believe it was labeled, to elect officers. And the information I had, which was from very good sources, was that there'd be some new officers in place starting at the top with the chair. And now it didn't work out that way, and we'll talk about the details. But really, looking back on it, I should have placed a couple of strategic phone calls to people, and I did not do that. And you know something? I apologize to those people because I stand by what I wrote in the blog. It turned out to be very accurate. The results were a little different than, again, what the sources told me they thought they'd be. But suffice it to say, if I had to do it again, I would have placed a couple of strategic phone calls, and I will do that in the future.
Nah.
Oh,
wrong,
okay. Now,
wrong,
Bazzo is going to. Are you going to unsalvo me?
Yes, because you did nothing wrong. This was a blog. This was not a news story. You told me a long time the difference between a blog and a news story. Number one, in a blog, we don't have to be fair. It's still an opinion piece. It's not
again,
news.
But look at it this way too, Bazzo. What you're saying, may have some merit. I mean, blogs are a little different, but there's also something about the perception. If the perception of the person is that it's news, then it has to be presented in as responsible and accountable a way as possible.
I thought you were responsible. We were not talking about...
I thought I was responsible,
we were not
too.
Slandering anybody.
Right.
See, there was no slandering.
No, I would never do that.
What was happened, and what had happened, is Bruce got phone calls, I got phone calls, that there was going to be a coup in the leadership of the Republican Party.
In Yorktown.
In Yorktown. There's going to be a coup, and one of the people that we get a lot of press releases from, Matt Slater, who had previously worked for Terrence Murphy and now works for Steve Katz.
Assemblyman Steve Katz, right? And Terrence is the town council.
Right, was going to run and try to be...
And worked for State Senator Greg Ball before he was state senator.
Right, and he was going to try to be the new party chair after the Susan Siegel fiasco of the recent primary. I mean, after all, Grace cleaned her clock. They knew that from the beginning there was going to be problems with giving Susan the renomination, but the old guard insisted, and it came to pass, and this was visible a mile away. When you talk to people that were collecting signatures, people were reluctant to sign the petition.
Yeah,
but this was the background of why there was going to be a coup.
Right, but you know how I am about making everything very transparent to the audience, and in terms of the process, let's make it clear that at the nominating meeting of the Republicans, they have district leaders who vote. So when you say, it's not like the old guard ipso facto determined who would be the nominees. A vote was taken, and there were 3 candidates.
Yeah, but we can't go into it on the air. And the reality is, we know what happened and what transpired to make those nominations possible.
Right.
And we couldn't write about it, because then that would have been journalistic malpractice. See, what you did in the blog was not journalistic malpractice. You shine the light.
I didn't say it was.
No, but if you're salvoing yourself, you're thinking you did something wrong journalistically. I don't, even though I didn't go to college and you did, I don't think you did anything wrong journalistically.
Well, I didn't say that, though.
There was no need to call and warn somebody.
You're not warning, you're asking for a comment.
And then I don't want to give people a chance to lie to my face.
It doesn't matter. Then you say they declined comment.
That's not true. You know, when you talk to a couple of these people on the phone, they lied to your face.
After the fact.
And you knew they were lying. So why give them if they would have lied to you before you knew everything, you may have been reluctant to write what you wrote, which was important to show people in general and people in the party that your best friend is more than willing to stab you in the back if they see failure coming. The first person there, and this is what changed the results, I think up into the time that you wrote the blog, that Matt Slater might have been the new party chair. But when you wrote the blog, one of the people behind this who called to deny everything also threw Slater under the bus and made him swing this out alone. So now the people that were all gung-ho to do this coup d'etat had nobody to hide behind, so they all ran back undercover to the but you knew that with the way the vote turned out, Serafina
was reelected chair.
Right.
Serafina Mastro was reelected chair.
But Matt Slater is now the vice chair. Now, Serafina only won by 5 votes. It was 25 to 20, maybe 20, maybe 4 votes, but it was still so close, which is not a good thing in her position for her longevity, to be so close to being overthrown. But Slater, no, 5 votes is a narrow margin.
Right. Well, not only that, but as far as her longevity goes, Serafina, my understanding is, wasn't even planning to run for re-election until virtually the morning of the election. And so
because she knew before the light shined out that she didn't have the votes. And then when you shine the light, cockroaches have to hide from the light. You know, you can only stab people in the back in the dark. When they see you coming, it doesn't count. Then you hide the knife in your pocket and you shake their hand and smile and say, "Hi, friend." She then knew that once the light was shined, she got the phone calls, "We back you," because there were people that were backing Matt. And I know this, that when they talked to you, said, no, I was backing Serafina all along. I told you, I'm not going to give you, salvoing yourself, you're giving somebody a chance to lie to you. And I don't believe in ever putting people in a position to disappoint
Well, you know
me.
something, that's part of journalism. I mean,
yeah,
that is part of journalism.
I know, but with a blog, you don't have to put people in a position to disappoint you.
Well, there's also the journalistic discipline, depending on the story, that you have to ask the question. It's that I can't control what if they tell me is true or not true.
If you were dealing with a slanderous thing, it's something that was going to ruin somebody's reputation, or you were going to break a state secret, maybe. But we're dealing here with just a changeover in party, a dissatisfaction. You know, failure is an orphan. Success has a lot of fathers. And you had a failure here in this primary.
Right.
You had a failure. I mean, that Tom DiChiaro came so close to beating Nick. Right. I mean, and even on the conservative line, Nick only beat Dave Paganelli by 4 votes, and he's Mr. Conservative. He's been there a long time. And Dave cleaned everybody's clock on the council line, and Grace cleaned Siegel's clock. And there's a good chance that of this taping, that Grace may actually take the conservative line through a write-in thing. He's not that far behind.
Yes, right.
And so...
by the time the show airs, that will be determined.
So you have a lot of egg on a lot of faces going on. And
and I want to interject, too, that as somebody, a little birdie just whispered in my ear, at the Republican nominating meeting, as far as the district leaders go and the vote for the candidate for supervisor, there are a lot of proxies. And so district leaders who are there can control other votes of people who are not there. And that's why I know I've spoken to somebody recently who is vehemently against proxies for that reason.
I'll tell you who else is against it. He's been public. He was public in the show about that, Steve Katz.
Oh, Steve Katz and Tom DiChiaro is against them, too.
Because if you're going to vote, you vote. If you're not going to vote, you don't let somebody else vote in your name.
Right.
I mean, it's like going in both in November and giving somebody else to
Well, and also, and you're right, there's a lot of other shades and layers to this, and that is that Steve Katz, who, as I reported in the blog, was reported to be behind or involved in wanting Matt to be chair of the Yorktown Republican Party. There is a circle here that closes the loop, so to speak, and that is that Steve Katz on our show and in other conversations I've had with him and other people is very much on record that he doesn't believe that there should be any committee endorsements of any candidate, that a primary should determine. The public alone should determine who the candidate is, not a small group of people, whether it's district leaders, whether it's committee officers who steer and influence the district leaders. And I believe he even wants to have legislation passed, doesn't he?
Right, yes, he does.
Right.
And he's probably right, because A lot of this could have been avoided if there wasn't this endorsement by the party. Go out, if you're registered, go out and get your signatures. In Paganelli's case, if you want to issue another guy a Wilson Pecula so they can get signatures in your name, that's fine too.
Right.
But
but let's talk a little bit, Bazzo, because unless it was my imagination, I could swear I heard some control room chatter about blogs, and I think it's a very relevant and compelling subject about what about blogs? You know, are people who write blogs such as Bruce the Blog, me, or Bazzo, you, are we as accountable as a print journalist who works for a newspaper? Wow. So I'll throw the first salvo, you might say, and that is that, here's part of how I see that if the person reading the blog agrees with what you said and/or what you wrote maybe reflects well on them, then you're okay. If the person reading the blog doesn't agree with what you said, and this goes for an article in the newspaper as well, or it doesn't reflect well on them, then you're unaccountable and you're irresponsible, right?
Well, come on, I've said this before. When they agree with you, you're the smartest guy in the room. When they don't agree with you, you're a hack. We know politicians that try to get me fired, if you remember, and now they're my best friends.
Right.
Because now they need what I do and what you do. One of the things that put me on your radar was the fact that at those days, only me and Jeff Green of Planned Putnam put our names to our blogs.
Right.
You had a big thing about anonymous blogs.
Right.
And you wouldn't pay attention to what they said at all.
Cowardly.
Yes, you had, you
gutless, what do they call them? Gutless wonders.
You were Velment, and to this day,
But it's true. If you don't put your name on it, I really don't care what you have to say.
No matter,
and nobody
no matter
should
if
care
there's any validity what you're saying, if you can't put your name to what you're saying, I mean, there was a blog in Peekskill that had this stuff about when they were building the new middle school. A lot of stuff they said was valid. Turned out though, but they wouldn't put their name on it, so nobody paid attention to them.
Right.
Because if you can't put your name on it, then how can we trust what you're saying?
Right. Well, listen, the toughest talkers, in today's blogosphere, right? The toughest talkers in the world are the people who are the weakest of spine if they don't put their name on the blog. It's like you can talk, and that is, the anonymous blogs talk tough because they're not being held accountable for what they're saying, and so what they say is meaningless.
The thing about a blog is it gets more, first of all, in politics, the people that read political blogs, are going to vote. So it's a prime audience for politicians. People aren't going that deep into the process to have something else to drink with their cup of coffee. Your blog, my blog, Politics on the Hudson, though, they don't do opinion. They just print other people's work.
Right.
But they don't do their own. And you don't know who's doing their blog, but they could.
Right. But again, part of this is that whatever we write, and as in the case of my recent blog, where I did get a couple of unhappy phone calls, which I understand, you know where to find Bazzo. You know where to find me. If you're posting a comment, you don't have to be a blogger, by the way. You could be just posting a comment on some website, community website, whatever it is. And, if you're attacking somebody, if you're criticizing something and you don't put your name on it, then, it means nobody, including Bazzo or I, is going to go and look under every rock to find out where you are.
Well, I scan all the comments on my blog, and if nobody signs their name to it, I push it into the trash section.
Right.
I won't let anybody go after another politician or their ideas if they're not willing to put their name to it. See, the one thing we always hear, we were afraid of retaliation.
Right.
You've been blogging, I've been blogging, but though you were still ahead of a newspaper, I wasn't.
If
but I've never been retaliated
if you're afraid of retaliation,
against.
Don't write it. I mean, it's very simple. But what's the analogy? What thrives, what form of nature thrives like in darkness under a rock?
Cockroaches.
A fungus.
But the fact is, there is no retaliation. They can't afford it.
Right.
Even when I was just a blog before you gave me validation by giving me the column, there is no retaliation because if they're reading it, they're going to read that you retaliated.
Right.
It's
but again, that's the phoniest of excuses for not putting a name on it. If you're afraid of retaliation, then putting a name on it holds you more responsible, and you won't say something, like that. And that's the whole point of it. By the way, Bazzo, we're talking about the election for the chair of the Yorktown Republican Party. Now, what about this chair? Why is this chair empty? Did we not elect somebody? Did we not elect it? Is this an unelected chair?
No. Oh, that's normally where our guest sits. And the guest this week, of course, is our audience. And I'm going to ignore you like I ignore our guest every week and make the show about me.
Yeah, and by the way, you know something? I've had some complaints about that, seriously, so we should talk about it. Somebody say, he keeps talking instead of letting the guest talk. And so what do you have to say about that? Are you going to mend your ways?
Not really. It's a habit I've had
all my life. Sorry, I tried, folks.
It's a habit I've had all my life, and maybe it's a failing. But they take so long to get to their point, and my mind has already digested where they're going. You know, they're going from A to B by going through C, and I don't have time to decide. So once I know where they're going, I just go on from there because I know if they would just get to the point, I'd be a happy man.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair enough. You know, by the way, do you know, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that this is our 13th show.
Yes.
Yeah, which, you know, and so I guess maybe we don't have a guest on because we didn't want to jinx a guest on our 13th show. But you know, we're okay. We're sort of immune to that. There was still stuff, though, so we had to catch, because I've had this discussion with Bruce behind the scenes that you watch this show because you care what we think. You already know what the politicians, you read about them in the paper. But the reason why you read his blog, my column, his column, is because you want to know what we think about something. And this is a show now to discuss what we think about. And by the way, let's also mention, Bazzo, that, you know, in terms of coming attractions, folks, we've talked to Yorktown Councilman Terrence Murphy about being on the show very quickly, very soon, certainly before the November 8 election. And of course, he is running on the Republican line for District 4 of the Westchester County Legislature. That seat is now held by, has been held for a number of years by Mike Kaplowitz, right?
We also got...
And also a Yorktown councilman candidate on the Democratic line, Rich Campanero. And I believe after that, there's also...
Don't you talk to Greg Ball's people yet?
Yes, and
they
also...
They want to come and discuss fracking.
State Senator Greg Ball wants to talk about hydrofracking, hydraulic fracturing. And Bazzo and Senator Ball will have an interesting, not necessarily agreeable discussion about that.
I had a call from Steve Katz last night. We're going to have him back on the show. I didn't get a chance to talk to you later. He's got 11 things.
Well, have you been dogging cats?
Yes, I've been dogging cats.
All right.
Yes,
I just wanted to know.
Yes. Right. I can't say it again. Anyway.
I had to get at least one pun in.
He's got 11 things to go through the pipe for the next legislative session that's going to, he says, help create private sector jobs. And I think we should hear him out before the election, too, because this way we can find out what other candidates think about his proposals.
Right. And as we've said before, you know, not only for politicians, obviously, but for everybody, creating jobs is job number one in this country right now.
Well, I still don't think a government can create a job that doesn't rely on
I didn't say the government. I just said creating jobs.
Well, okay. Right. Segue. Headline. New York Post this week. Jackpot. Polls bet on New York City casinos.
Yeah.
It seems that Scalos and Silver, the head of the state Senate, have finally agreed to let a constitutional amendment to the New York State to allow casino gambling in New York. Now, the process is they would pass it one year, then they have to pass it another year, and then it gets to be the voter referendum the third year. So it'll take about 6 years to do an amendment to the Constitution. What do you think about the idea of casino gambling in New York?
What do I think about it? You bet. No, I agree with it. It's non-tax revenue. I mean, what's wrong with it? You know, I've been to Vegas about 40 times in my business career for conventions. I mean, I think Vegas is a great place. It's unique. Atlantic City, which I really don't go to. But what's wrong with it? I mean, what's wrong with gambling to generate revenue for the state?
Because they say it's a tax on the poor, but I don't think poor people have money to gamble. You have people that have an income limitations, but they know their budgets. You know, I'm tired of the government treating everybody like babies.
Right.
And we're losing a fortune to out-of-state casinos.
And we're losing time. So it's time to wrap it up, Bazzo.
Already?
Yes.
Listen, the opinions tonight definitely were mine. And you may beg to differ.
And when Bruce the Blog listens, people, even Bazzo, talk. Good night, everybody.
We'll see you all next week.